So before getting a little more into Glendale and things like that, we had talked a little bit, but Bill Parrish, but a lot of people call you Cossie. That's how I met you when I first met. That was your name. So how did that name come about? What is there a meaning behind it?
Yeah, it is. But your generation, this is probably beyond my generation, that would know. When I was a kid, with all of us having to be potty trained, my mom said that this show come on TV. It was called Cosmo Topper, and Topper was a ghost, and so it was played by Charles Nelson Riley. And my mom said that whenever that show came on, she would set the potty there because she knew I would run and sit on the on the potty, and that's how I got potty trained. And so they started. Our family realized, the show is on, and so they started calling me Cosmo. That's when I, because of that show. And then it just broke off into Cossie. Or now my younger brothers, we all have nicknames. Like I have a brother under me, he's called Lumpy, and then Pie, or Pie Face. And so Lumpy got his name because he had got a little lump on the top of his head. And Pie, basically that he would get stuff on his face when he ate and all of that. But funny thing with Pie, and we were just talking about this the other day, when he went to school in kindergarten, they asked him what his name is for his name, and he said Pie. And his teacher said, well, what's your last name? He said, Face. So these names were so ingrained in us that my teachers called me Cossie. That's all they called me, except my 5th grade teacher. When they were doing the roll at the beginning of the class, they always, you raise your hand when the new year starts until a teacher knows everybody's name. So she said my name, my formal name, William, and before I could raise my hand, all of the people in the class, they said, that's Cossie. And she looked at me, she said, you'll be William in this class. And she's the only teacher that called me William. She's the only teacher out of all the teachers and everybody in the school.
What was that teacher's name?
Miss Crosby. I got a story about her, too, when we get into the Underground Railroad piece of this.
So, in the elementary, you went to Glendale Elementary, right?
Yeah.
And I was reading some stuff about, I guess, some impactful teachers you might have had, and teachers, maybe a kindergarten or 1st grade teacher.
Yeah.
Mrs. Lyle, maybe?
Yeah,
okay.
Miss Lyle.
Talk about her a little bit?
Yeah, wow, that's interesting you found Miss Lyle. Miss Lyle was my first crush. I was in love, me and my friend Shane, my best friend Shane. We were in love with Miss Lyle, and people in my class, even now that I'm good friends with, even the people that grew up, and they said that I was Miss Lyle's pet, and she treated me better than everybody else and all that stuff, which I was hopeful anyway that was the case, because I didn't really care. I mean, she was a great teacher. She was really inspiring. She was tough. But interesting thing about that, at the end of the year, we didn't want the year to end. And so me and Shane, we was crying at the end of the year. We didn't want to. So she comforted us, tell us, "Well, you'll be okay. You're going into 3rd grade next year. You'll be all right," and stuff. So when next year came, in 3rd grade, we were still feeling that. So what we would do is we would write letters. Like with recess, she'd go out recess with the kids and stuff. We write a letter and stuff, and then we put at the end of it, "I love you," and we would put it on her desk. That was just our way of saying we were not being able to move on. But yeah, it was, we had those kinds of relationships, that teachers that impacted you in a way. Like you remember when I really started reading and how I got turned me on to the Putnam series books, and I started reading those, and I just started reading the whole series, just little things like that, and my reading comprehension and all that, and I wasn't playing a whole lot. I'd be reading a book somewhere, and my when you got called for dinner, sometimes you didn't want to break away from that book because it was so exciting. So she was probably one of the key early teachers in my life that got me hooked on reading. Okay. Yeah.
And maybe a math teacher, Mr. Barrett?
Mr. Barrett, yeah. Okay. Mr. Barrett, it's all sometimes really simple, Brandon. Sometimes like how you motivate a kid and stuff. And Mr. Barrett, the first day of school, I was good in math, but I knew I could be better. And you need somebody sometimes to motivate you. And so the first day of class, Mr. Barrett said, okay, everybody in this class has an A. I mean, just that right there, where other teachers may say, hey, this is going to be a tough class, and some of y'all are not going to make, that kind of attitude. Mr. Barrett said, hey, everybody's got an A. And he wasn't really trying to fail you. He was trying to make you better. And everybody, even people who struggle with math, it came easy to me, but people who struggle with it did well in his class. And that gave them confidence going on because you had a good teacher. He was more interested in not just having a reputation for people doing well and feeling confident when they left out of his class to go to a next level of math. So yeah, he was one of my favorites. Yeah.
And how did you and Shane meet?
Shane lived around the corner from me. He was from a big family, and pretty big family. I think it was 8 of them. And Shane and I were just best friends. I mean, we all played. You know how it is. You got your block of people that you play with, you do everything with. The problem in our neighborhood was that when we were on punishment or something, then it shut down all the sports because you got, when we weren't able to come out, then you couldn't put together, a good team of people when we were on punishment. So, but Shane and I, we were in second grade, kindergarten, first grade, second grade, third grade together, and in fourth grade we were in separate classes, but in fifth grade. So we went through elementary school being in the same class. There were 3 classes for each grade level, but it seemed like every year Shane and I were in the same class. So yeah, he was my best friend then.
Do you still talk to him now, or?
No, he's had some challenges, physically and some of that. A few years ago, we talked when he was at a better place in that, but right now he's struggling with some things. So yeah.
Okay. Well, so before we get into like high school, I want to go back a little bit and just kind of talk about the history of Glendale, with kind of what you kind of touched on just a tad bit, like the Underground Railroad and stuff like that. Where Glendale played in that situation.
Yeah, this is growing up in Glendale, you could tell that it was a very fluent neighborhood, and growing up even from the standpoint of, where we were, we lived off of a garden, and, everybody had gardens and all that, and we lived on the black side of the village. So in a lot of cases, people don't even know that there was a black community in Glendale. So that people would always be surprised for you to hear you say, like, well, I live in Glendale, and they're like, well, you don't live in Glendale, no black people in Glendale. But it was that way then. But one of the things about it, one of the things I was very sensitive to, even as a kid in first, second grade, was that we were in groups, and there were 3 groups, and there was group number 1, group 2, and group 3. Group 1 was the rich white kids. Maybe 1 black person in there, maybe 2. And group 2, I was in group 2. There was a bunch of us in group 2, and then group 3 was really the group that was not quite, what they felt academically to be in group 2. So if you were in group 3, you pretty much stayed in group 3, and each of us came in a group, and unless you were doing so outstanding that they might move you. But really it was designed by social strata in many cases, unless you were really, if you were wealthy and you were really struggling, then they would, you would be in group 2 or 3. But that's the way things were then. And I was aware of that. Maybe a lot of kids weren't, but I was. But in elementary school, I was an outstanding athlete. So that was a thing that really kind of, as it is still now, puts you over the top. Like, it was all about the kickball games, or it was all about trying to get the presidential physical fitness awards and stuff. And I would get those because I was probably one of the best athletes in that. And even elementary school, I played in 4th grade. I was on the 6th grade team. So the coach, Mr. Wilson, he was a great coach. He was, we were using the medicine ball and stuff. He had these techniques and stuff that he was using for us to train and all of that stuff. And but in a school like that, many times it's there is the social strata part of that. And as kids, you're not really paying as much attention to that because you just, my friends were black and white. I knew what was going on, but it didn't bother me as much because my friends were my friends and they were black and white, but it did exist. So I think then in 6th grade, one of my best friends, he was being socialized before going to 7th grade. 7th grade is a big deal for being socialized. So you're going to Lot Speech, or you're going to Summit Country Day, or you're going to one of those schools that traditionally, in your family, you got a history of those schools. So one of my friends, he was going there. We were best friends, and his dad said if I went, he would pay my way. That he would pay my way to go to Summit. And so my dad was saying, I said, well, I don't think I want to go. So I told him, I said, all my friends are going to Princeton, man. The other people are going to Princeton. I'll be the only black guy at this school. And I was like, But I said, we can work on continuing to being friends, but I think I'm going to go on to Princeton. So that's how I ended up ultimately going on to junior high school in that. But I had an opportunity to go to a more private school if I had wanted to, but socially I already knew, like, this is not going to happen. So